Hi guys. So I'm gonna try to do a class lecture like this where I go through my printout of PowerPoints that you have the copy on Blackboard and go through them as you on your end can maybe watch my video and then follow along, or maybe just listen to me lecture and then review the video later, or whatever. I know it's gonna be maybe difficult to have to prove or even make a lot of you guys sit through me lecturing by myself, but I just want to do this for anybody who we're going to assign the lectures via PowerPoint, and then anybody who's like, I don't get this, and then, you at least you have the video to come back and watch me lecture and explain everything a little bit better, and so forth. So I already feel weird doing this, like my whole family's upstairs, and I'm like, I'm going downstairs to lecture a video, leave me alone. And I'm like whispering, so I feel weird doing this. But and I also need to test out to see if my iPhone can withhold a video for more than, let's say, a half hour, 40 minutes that this goes, and then if I'm be able to email it to myself and then be able to upload it on Blackboard, because then I'm gonna most likely do this for 40 minutes, hopefully not, and then email it to myself, and then it's not going to go, which would be very upsetting. So let's just start with some basics. Number one, I hope everyone's being very healthy and safe, and I hope that out of all the people that have been sick, that none of you guys are amongst them. And I know there was a John Jay student, but whatever, I don't want to waste too much time talking as if I'm in the class with you guys, but I just hope everyone's okay. But all right, so just a little bit of housekeeping stuff, because I don't want to keep sending announcements. And I mean, my way of just making sure that people are actually watching these videos is by making sure that everything that I think you would ask me is addressed here, and then I just hope that I don't get a million questions on the same things, because I'm just gonna be like, watch the video. But so where we are at today is March 18th. So on the syllabus, it says that we're supposed to be at week 8, sexuality, Wednesday, March 18th. So since tomorrow is when, at least the last announcement that I saw was that that was when we were supposed to have in class. And I didn't want to wait until Monday to push everything a little too back. So I decided to push stuff for week 7 and week 8 to be due tomorrow. So you saw paper 2 has been pushed to be due tomorrow, like 12 a.m. before the end of the day. So not like 6 p.m. as if we have class, just due tomorrow before Friday, right? So paper is due tomorrow, paper 2 is due tomorrow, and then you have discussion board 7, which will be due tomorrow as well, which is going to be based on raised without a gender and your reading of gender. Chapter 5. So basically it's as if you're looking at the syllabus, it is almost as if we are, crossing out week 7 next to gender and just making gender week 8, right? And then making sexuality week 9. So we're going to start fresh week 9 coming up, which is, wait, it doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah, so this is week, see, this is why I need to be able to stop things. All right, so this is gender. Gender is going to be due this week. So this is week 9, right? So we're going to do gender to be week 9, and then sexuality week. All right, let's stop this real quick. Okay, let's try it again. So we are in week 8. So this is like the week of gender. And then next week we're going to be in week 9. And then that's when we will be doing sexuality, and then so forth. So I'll update the syllabus and put an updated copy. I have so many things that I need to do for, like, my job. We're trying to get remote access, and people are still emailing me to-do lists. And then I'm getting to-do lists from my daughter's school to homeschool her. So it's like, all right, I have to homeschool my child and also do this for you guys. And then, even though I don't have to do this, but I want to. And also, do remote access and work from home for my job. Anyway, but that brings me to something that's relatable to our class, which is the institutional arenas. And I actually had somebody email me. He asked me to clarify the state and the market and the family arenas for them, because as you know, for paper 2, it's like hard because I don't really print everything out. So for paper 2, I have you guys picking 2 policies from chapters 2, 3, and 4. So not 2 from 2, 2 from 3, 2 from 4. No, 2 policies from throughout these all chapters. So, you know, you can have 2 from the same chapter. You can have 1 from 3 and 1 from 4, 1 from 2, 1 from 3. None from, there's going to be one that's going to not have one picked from, right? At least 1 or 2. So just 2 from all 3 chapters. So you have a lot of free space there. That was implemented by the American government. That's another thing I've been getting emails from, of like, oh, like what about, I can't even think of the examples. I've gotten emails, people asking me, like, what about, I'm trying to think of something that we learned about that was an example of someone asked me, oh, what about one of the theories that social capital? Social capital isn't something that's been implemented by the government. That's a theory that Philip Cohen gave us as, you know, this is something that people have, you know, their relationships that have been cultivated through families. And, you know, this is something that's not necessarily monetary, but it's, you know, relationships that are able to help you one day get a job or meet people a certain way. So that's not something that's been implemented of the government. I'm sure there are things social capital could relate to the government. Like, for example, you know, our current administration now, a lot of family members are in their jobs because a lot of people have their job because of their social capital, right? But that's not something that's implemented by the American government. I mean something that the government is specifically implemented, that was directly created to help families or disadvantage certain types of families, or disadvantage certain types of people that have affected their family life, or advantage one group over the other. And that's what I mean with the whole directly and indirectly thing. So, you know, I've gotten some emails, people naming things that have absolutely nothing to do with the American government. I specify things that are implemented by the government. So just make sure that, I don't like looking at my nails. Make sure that you pick something that's not just a theory and something that we've learned about. Make sure you pick something that the government has a hand in, right? So whether it's with the Native Americans and, you know, relocating them, or African Americans and slavery, like things like that. Not, you know, familialism that's more likely to be in Latin families as described by Cohen. That's not implemented by the government. So, because, you know, we already spoke about the different kinds of families. And so I want to talk specifically with this paper, the role the government plays in changing families. And one way we can talk about this now with our current events, that's how you know it's real. Like, there's a real lecture at my Red Bull. One of the ways you can relate what's happening now is this whole thing that, while I'm here with you guys, I'm going to Google it, that the current administration is looking to implement with the corona, what is it, Trump administration, stimulus checks, I think. And the very term that they're using to describe these checks that they're going to implement is based on families, right? I think that, as I'm looking, Senate passes bill, let's look, can you guys see this? I can't flip it around. Senate passes bill to combat pandemic as administration proposes direct deposits. So they want to start giving people payments to kind of alleviate the economic pressures that we're soon going to all be facing, unfortunately, because of this crisis. So what they're going to do is start sending out checks and doing direct deposit. Hopefully, maybe, let's see. But this is a perfect example of the state arena, right? Which we've learned from previous classes. It is one of 3 institutional arenas that Cohen introduces in the textbook, right? So institutional arena is a social space where there are players in common roles who are following similar rules of interaction. Let me get the real definition. A social space in which relations between people in common positions are governed by accepted rules of interaction, right? So the three specific arenas that Como decides to speak about, and I'm going over this because I had students email me that they still need help with this, and I'm not in class to do this. And just also reminding you, as is further explained in chapter 1. Family, state, market. Family is what we're talking about in class. Childbearing, socialization, right? This is the social unit of the family, is where we do one thing, right? So like in my unit, I'm mom. I've already done this with you guys. And then the market and the state is the government. I don't know if it's not that much, I don't know how else to explain it other than the state is a government. There are different levels of government: federal, state, Cuomo, de Blasio, Trump. They're all doing different things. So right now with this corona thing, you can see de Blasio and Cuomo doing one thing for New York, but the federal government is trying to do something completely different for the entire country, right? But that's the state, that's the government, right? They monitor, taxes and, warfare and, social services and law, violence, welfare, war, behavior, which is legally regulated, violence is controlled, resources are redistributed. Boom, that's the government. The market, which I think is maybe what's confusing a lot of people, is also very relatable to what we're doing now. What's going on now is your job, right? It's the marketplace, right? It's the economy. And a lot of times it feels like those two can be conflated, which it is, right? So right now a lot of people are out of work, so the government's getting involved, but especially in America, it's not really always together like that. They're two separate arenas. So so you're a citizen of the United States, but you're an employee of Kmart, right? So in the market arena, you can be a producer or a consumer, right? You work there or you consume from this company that's a part of the market, right? So you work at Apple, right? But you're also a consumer of Apple, right? You have an iPhone. So the definition of that, really briefly, of at least in terms to Cohen, is where you have labor for pay and where you have some kind of economic exchange. So just think of that like the state, where there are rules and people are being regulated, and then the market, where you have some kind of economic exchange. So these are three different arenas in society that we all have as human beings, and we act differently in all three arenas. So what I'm asking you to do for paper 2, and again, if you're someone who's like, I get this already, fast forward, but what I'm asking you to do for paper 2 is just pick 2 policies, and I'll give you an example of how to do that, even though I feel like I did this already. Pick 2 policies and that was implemented by the government, and explain what it is and how it's affected families, and whether or not, and what arenas are involved in this policy that you chose. So let's say, I'm not going to pick something from the chapters because I don't want to give people free answers, but let's say Trump puts out a stimulus package and it's really called like Corona stimulus package, just boom, okay, tomorrow. And this 2040, and I'm actually someone write a similar paper, and this is what they're going to write about. I'm going to write about the Corona stimulus package, which took place in 2020, right? The Corona stimulus package, blah, 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 was because of this. Short summary: it affected families because a lot of people were out of job. In particular, affected, because remember I have you guys writing which groups are specifically affected. I think I do for this one. I don't know, reread the instructions. And it particularly affected single moms. Why did it affect single moms? Because single moms are on a single income. That is specifically addressed in this chapter. And then who's most likely to be single moms? African American women. Why? Because of, other things that we've already discussed, not to be repetitive. But, and these are examples of the state and market arena affecting the family arena. That's just like a blatant, all three arenas affecting, because now the market is no longer running smoothly because people aren't working. And so the state is getting involved, and they're going to send us money, maybe. I'm fortunate enough to have a job that I'm still getting paid. I'm able to have this. I'm still getting paid from both John Jay and Danny, but there are a lot of people who aren't this lucky. So that's an example of the state, of you answering the question, and it doesn't have to be like a whole explanation. You could throw the terms in there and just, throw it in there in your explanation. But I am going to look for this, like, this is an example of the family and state arena. you know, affecting family life. Another thing, you know, there could be whatever, depending on what you're talking about. Let's say you write about slavery. You don't have to it wouldn't necessarily be the market arena doing anything with family life. It's basically the government that had slavery. So, you know, this is like slavery is an example of the state not recognizing all human beings as human beings and recognizing African American men and women as property, right? That's a direct quote from the state. And this is how African American families have been affected since then. That's an example of the state arena negatively affecting the family arena. Gay marriage, you know, a lot of more and more gay families coming up. So now this is an example of the family arena affecting the state, right? Because now the state finally recognized that times are changing and it's time for us to legalize marriage. So whatever, I'm just giving those examples. I know I'm already 10 minutes in and it's kind of reflective of how I am in class, but I'm just, so again, I'm sorry if you're one of those students who needed help and this wasn't that clarifying. You know, go back to chapter 1 PowerPoint. I mean, I feel like I gave really good examples on this, or reread chapter 1. But I don't want to spend too much time going over older stuff that we've went through. But all right, so let's move on. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do every single slide. I just want to go over general points and, you know, play this when you're like cooking and, you know, hope maybe you could play on your cell phone or, you know, maybe when you're like, you know, at home and, you know, showering, I don't know, but just play me in the background and or watch your PowerPoint and then come here if you want to see what kind of points you're going to be clarified on. What I'm also going to try to do is put up on Blackboard. Remember when I had, sorry, I'm like a mess right now. Remember when I had questions from chapter 1 and 2, which was, oh, here it goes. Chapters from 1 and 2, which were reviews. So I'm still going to do this. I think I'm going to do it next week for 3, 4, and 5. Basically, what was I going to say? Oh, for chapters 3, 4, 5, review questions, which are going to be on your final, which is still going to happen. Just reminding you that. So everything obviously is going to be online from now on. I'm accepting your papers via email. Your discussion board posts are going to be a lot harder. And I might even throw in some like quiz-like scenarios where you're just answering questions like multiple choice. But I need to make sure that you guys are keeping up with your readings and not just getting a credit for a class for free. Like, you know, this is my job as what I'm being hired, what I've been hired to do, and what I'm being instructed by my department. And, you know, you're not gonna have the same 50 minimum word questions the next 2 weeks and so forth. And I'm also going to make sure that these videos are at minimum the videos are being watched or the PowerPoints are being ran through. So your PowerPoint is going to be made available for the gender chapter tomorrow night after everything is due. So same as everything. So when discussion boards and everything is due is when after that's when the PowerPoint for that week's lecture will be made available, right? Because I'm not going to make a PowerPoint available so you can then copy and paste answers to questions, right? So do that. And then when that PowerPoint becomes available, then my videos will become available. And then, so next week, you know, this week was kind of simple. Next week, I'll probably keep it kind of simple. Maybe just throw in a little bit more advanced of a question for the discussion board or throw in like a quiz type thing, which is going to be like maybe the review questions for 2, 3, 4, 5. So whatever, I'll update you guys. Don't stress out. Just worry about your papers that are due tomorrow. But all right. All right. Actually, I think I'm going to pause this and then start fresh with gender. All right. So I want to stop this just in case, I don't know, the video gets too big. All right. So chapter 5 is gender. So this is one of my more interesting chapters. I like teaching gender and sexuality together, as you see with my personal PowerPoint slide. I usually teach gender and sexuality together, although we learn that they are not necessarily the same. So if we were in class right now, I would be asking, what is gender? What is sexuality? Why are they the same and are they different? So I'm going to ask you guys, if you have your PowerPoint in front of you, and I know it's also kind of like hello, like we have the screen open of you lecturing, but I think you'll be able to download the PowerPoint and open as a separate file. Maybe email it to yourself, no pressure, whatever you want to do, so you could like look at it on your phone and watch the video, but whatever you can do. But all right, so the chapter starts talking about Chrissy Teigen, John Legend, how they're okay. So this sex selective abortion. So again, if we were in class, actually, I'm gonna start writing things down as to things I might ask questions. Actually, no, because this chapter's already done. I'm not gonna do that. But all right. So what I would be asking is, what do you guys think about sex selective abortions? Where people, well, you saw like in China, where they are like, you know, you find out you're having a female or girl, so you kill the baby because it is preferable for them to have males. Where this kind of backwards thing, and that's going on in America, where people are choosing the sex of the baby that they want. So they gave the example like Chrissy Teigen and John Legend, where they wanted a girl, and 7 states since then have banned this practice of actually choosing, and actually at the time of the chapter, so who knows how many, I mean, who knows, I'll Google it right now, but just this idea of sex selective, having children and choosing the sex. Do you agree with that? You know, do you disagree with that? Just keep that in mind. If we were in class, I'd be asking you guys this question. Actually, maybe I'll do something, because I'm still working in practice, I'll do something where I can have you guys answer a question that I asked in this lecture. So it's some kind of class participation. I think I'm gonna do that. So one of my questions is gonna be, what do you think about this sex selection practice? All right. So how the chapter starts, and I'm moving on to slide 2, is that sex and gender are both socially constructed categories. So we went over this for race. Race is something that's socially constructed, and I mean, I don't want to repeat too much of what we've already learned, but this idea of who is white and who is black, and then also, you know, the difference between race and ethnicity. And, you know, race is something that is based off somebody's perceived, how they look at you, how they see you externally, versus your ethnicity, which is something more cultural, right? So, like, I look at you, you look like you're Hispanic, and however, inside, culturally, I identify with being a certain type of Hispanic. So with sex and gender, this idea of the origins being in biology, but interpreted and ascribed with meaning through complex social interaction between people and institutions. So inscribed in biology, aka we identify somebody being a male or female based off biological reasons, right? So you have certain sex organs, we assign your gender to be either male or female. But also the reason why they consider it being a socially constructed category is because it's not just simply based off your biological parts. It is also based off, you identify with your sex and gender, not just based off of like you're born and you're like, oh my God, I'm a female, obviously, but also you can tell your sex by the way people talk to you, by the way people treat you, by the opportunities that you have in your society, depending on the society. And I thought it was interesting in the documentary that I had you guys watch, Raised Without a Gender, where you had, where are those bits? I have those notes. I don't want to get their names wrong, but, okay, yeah, I do have the notes for this. All right, Raised Without a Gender. So it was a Mappa, Mama, Hen, Han, Ho, and whatever. So there was a bunch of different ways that the people refer to themselves in this video. However, the main thing that I pulled out of it was, one interesting that I pulled out of it is when the main guy, and I forgot his name already, was speaking to, you know, the person who was doing the documentary, and he was like, what I find is interesting is that when this is a $12 hand sanitizer. So he was like, it feels as if that when people were to meet his kids or people were to meet him and they ask, like, you male or female, it's almost as if, I'm trying to find the quotes. I think I wrote it down. It was almost as if people didn't know how to act or how to treat you when they don't know your sex, right? Because so it's like you ask, is it you a male or a female? Because once you kind of get that settled, it's like, okay, now I know how I can treat you, right? I know if I call you Miss or Miss. I know if I have to like open the door for you, or, you know, just kind of give you a pound, or, you know, there's like certain things that we have for each gender. So he said, like, when people meet you and they don't know how to categorize themselves, people are like uncomfortable because it's like, I don't know how to treat you because I don't know how to put you. So that was interesting. I'm going to keep these notes out, so I'm going to probably refer to the film throughout. And I should have read your guys' discussion board post before I started this, but I really wanted to watch this video in class with you guys because I like hearing you guys' reactions and just getting like your automatic. Because some people are, you know, race is different. I feel like race, it's easy for people to be like, yeah, of course we're all the same. Like, you know, we're all humans. But then for like for this sex and gender, I feel like there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying anything wrong with that, who think that no, this is not the same thing as race. Like, you are born with I got a text message. You are born with certain sex parts, and people affiliated a lot of times with God, and you know, that's the way it's supposed to be, and people affiliate your sex parts with the way you're supposed to act. But that's where this idea of it being a social construction comes from, right? Because why is your sex part assigned with certain social expectations, right? Why is it because I have certain sex parts, I'm expected to act a certain way, talk a certain way, do certain things, and love the complete opposite, right? So those are things, that's the whole idea of it being a social constructed category. And I miss you guys, and I wish we were here to talk about this more in depth. All right, so sex is one's biological category, and gender is the social realization of a biological sex, right? So sex is when you are born with a, right, either a vagina or a, male penis, and of course but gender is different from that, right? So these are two different things. Gender is the social category of that actual sex, right? So you have a vagina, you're a female, right? Your sex is female, but your gender is either a girl or a woman. And then, you have male sex parts, and so you are a male. So I'm just going to go through my notes. All right, so a lot of the definitions here that are introduced in this chapter, a lot of definitions that I feel like it's important for you guys to know as people who are growing up in this day and age, because there are a lot of people scientifically who their body parts do not match their internal like hormonal structure, right? We saw that in the video. So the guy who was in the video, he was intersex, where he was born with I don't want to say it wrong because it's like offensive if you get it wrong, but if I have it remember right, he was intersex, so he was born with both male and female body parts. And as he grew up, he was identifying as one way, but it wasn't matching up with himself internally, right? So that's why he has a lot of gender neutral ways that he lives his own life, right? So he has he's mapa, and the way he raises his kids. Excuse. All right. So, sex and gender. This is something I usually expound the final. All right. I'm going to try to keep this down because we're already just 9 minutes in. All right. So, sex, we have sexual identity, gender identity, and gender expression. The difference between gender identity and gender expression is how you identify with your gender, right? So, gender is the social realization of biological sex, right? So, you have the sex, which is biological, right? So, I have a vagina, and I don't know, I keep doing that. I have a vagina, and I realize that I am a female, right? I identify myself as a female. And then not only do I identify as a female, but I express myself as a female, right? So I have the female sex, I am a female gender, I identify as female, and I express myself as a female. The reason why we have those different definitions is because there are a lot of people who have, a certain identity as one gender, but they don't express themselves as that gender. Or a lot of people who express themselves as one gender, but they don't identify as that, right? So maybe I express myself as a female, but deep down inside, I feel like I'm a man. So that's one part of that. So we have sex defined, sexual identity defined. The occurrence of this discrepancy when sexual identity does not match with one's assigned sex underscores the importance of recognizing sex as a socially constructed category. All right, so just keep that in mind. Gender identity, and the second part of gender expression. Okay, so this. No matter how biological or natural something may seem, society always affects how things are interpreted and treated. You guys can see that the right way, right? All right, I don't even know what I'm doing there. Yeah, so that's kind of basically what I was saying. So we have definitions. I am on slide 6 for anyone who is following. Sexual dimorphism, and which is physical differences between the sexes. I mean, that's basically what it's just saying. This is a definition for the differences that we have between sex. I never really asked about that question. I'm on to slide 7, which shows Princess Diana and Prince, soon to be King Charles. So I would ask you guys if we were in class, do you guys remember what this example was for? And this is actually one of my favorite parts of the chapter. I kind of want to pull up. So social behavior enhances rather than minimizes the differences between man and female. So what he says is that the differences between man and females is actually social and cultural, and it's not something that is bathed in science and biology. So although I know some men like to say, well, obviously there's a difference between male and females because women are less able to, if there was a fire, I would not want a woman coming in to carry me out. A woman's not able to carry me out. A woman's not able to, hit a home run as much as, I forget the guys, like I'm old school, but like Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds. A woman can't physically compete with a man. But what Cohen says in this chapter, and starting in page 162, which I like, is that the focus on these that in society and culture, we focus on physical differences, which is just naturally has given us this idea that men are superior, and not focusing on other reasons as to why women might be better, or might be the actual superior sex. So the example that he gives is number 1. First off, we are all begin as female fetuses, right? So he goes into that whole biological thing as to the chromosomes in page 160 and how the whole thing with XX chromosomes, XY, blah, blah. And so fetus continues and developing as it started, as a female. So all fetuses begin as female. So everybody, all males out there, you were once a female. Rejoice. And then there was the changes that happen, whatever, again, it's explained. Okay, here you go. So male and female fetuses begin identical, even after they developed. And then blah, blah, blah. And then the male starts forming and becomes a male. He also brings up how this idea of the male is how women come from male is set in these religious reasons of Adam and Eve, right? So Adam was made first by God, and then he took his rib and created Eve. So that's just another, kind of thing that this idea of men being superior and coming first comes from. So the idea of male athletic superiority. And it shows how there was, in the, sorry, I'm just kind of new because I usually don't have the book. But the fastest male marathon runner finished a race against a woman with like 80-minute difference. But then as time has went on, the gap has been down to less than 12 minutes. So it says maybe the fastest man in the world will always be faster than the fastest woman. But this example shows that social interventions such as intensive training and the encouragement of female athletes can radically reduce such disparities, right? So maybe 80 years ago, it seemed like, well, of course the man's running faster than the woman. But think about the support that women had, not just mentally, emotionally, but also just physically. Women had like training centers and roles that they had at home, right? Like these are things that have changed and have made it maybe easier now for today's woman to run only 10 minutes slower than the average man. So that's interesting. And then the reason why this example comes up is the height thing. So Princess Diana was actually not that much shorter than Prince Charles. And she was actually, I think, a little bit taller than him, and they say he's to stand like a stoop to make himself look taller. And they bring up the example of Michelle Obama being taller, and they say that they give some stats about the height of the average woman. So for some reason, we have this idea that women are supposed to be shorter than men, and that's kind of reflective in this idea of us being below them, right? Because if someone's taller than you, you're looking up at them. So it's just this kind of visual representation of us being lower. So, you know, that's just another kind of example of the societal expectation reflecting into something that's biological when it's really not. Doesn't really mean anything, and it's not necessarily true that all men are taller than women, as we know. And then it says social behavior serves to enhance the differences rather than minimize them. Let's see, what else? Okay, so the restroom symbols they get into. So they show like women with the bathroom symbols, right? They have like the broader shoulders. So you could just, and women's wearing a dress. So just small things like this that you probably never really thought about before until, you know, you read a book like this that kind of points these things out. Hello? Oh, there I heard somebody. All right, so, and also this idea of, and this is my favorite part when he's saying of whether or not women are the weaker sex. Are women really the weaker sex? And again, we're choosing, culturally, we've chosen to measure strength in physical ways, right? However, it says, in some measures, in fact, men are weaker. Women live longer on average. Men are more likely to die at every age. I actually just read a thing yesterday about how mostly people who are dying of this corona thing are men. Although men in their late teens are more likely to die, so men are more likely to die. Male fetuses are more vulnerable than females. Men just seem to have a natural vulnerability. And so that's just a kind of thing. So we, you know, so instead of focusing on this kind of other point of, I guess you can argue strength, right? Health strength, resilience of people argue that women have, we choose to focus on the physical thing, which in turn gives us this idea that men are the stronger sex. And this is what is discussed by Cohen in this chapter. Between up to page 165, for anybody who wants to go back and read it. Well, and reread it, because I know you guys have all read these chapters. So close. All right, so how different are we? So this is the slide that I am up to. So here we go. We have a man with long hair, clearly. We have a woman in a country with her breast out, and a woman doing all the hard labor, specifically in an African nation. I forget where they discussed. But this is also kind of just to extend the discussion of whether or not, you know, how the roles of men and women and what's expected of them change throughout cultures, right? So we have the Native American man here appears to be with long hair, the woman with her breast out because it's not sexualized in the culture that she lives in, and then the woman doing the hard labor. So again, I've heard men in the past say, well, we can't expect women to do, you know, the hard labor that men do. However, you can't expect that because you live in America, maybe. But these women, they're expected to do it, and they do it, right? So let's think about that. So we have the bathroom. All right, so these are all the definitions, and I've moved ahead. I'm on chapter 10 for anybody who is following along. Chapter 10, slide 10, with all the definitions. So these are the definitions that in today's day and age, you better know these definitions because you are gonna need to. I mean, I have to take trainings at my job in order to learn these definitions, because it's just such a part of our society now, which I'm happy about. So I think we need to be more understanding of these issues that are important to a lot of people. That'll be my kind of next question. Do you think, and I'm going to write down the time to help people out, but do you think it's important to learn all these definitions, or is it just dramatic or unnecessary? So here we go. We have intersex, transgender, transsexual, gender dysphoria, and androgynous. So these are different definitions that are explained in the textbook, and I'm going to kind of bang them out real quick. They're there for you. If you have any questions, email me and X them down below in the, I feel like I'm a YouTuber, X them below down in the comments. All right. So sex and gender, intersex definition. So intersex, this is what the guy had in the documentary. Chromosomal composition is unclear or does not correspond with the sexual anatomy at birth. 18 of 100,000 deaths. So think about, first of all, how many people are in the United States and just the world. Out of 100,000 births, people are born like this. 18. That's a lot of people. But so this is what the guy in the documentary, the Mappa, had in the documentary. So his anatomy does not match his sexual identity because he has some kind of chromosomal composition that does not match with what he was born with. All right. And also remember the science behind this. We all start the same, and then males form male organs after androgens flood the uterus. So there are a million things that go wrong with people when they're giving birth. So think about that happening, right? Just something happening that just messes up that internal situation. All right, transgender. I know a lot of people probably see this thing. We all know what transgender is. Like, hello, we were all around during Caitlyn Jenner and blah, blah. But it's a specific definition that a lot of people don't realize. It's different from other things. So, transgender. Individuals whose gender identity does not match their assigned sex. So remember, I gave a definition with gender of identity and expression. So identity is that internal identification. We went the same thing with social class, right? Your class, my back's on hurt. Let's stand soon. Your class identity is, right? So I'm middle class, I'm high class. There are certain things that we just identify with differently when you're of a certain class. The same thing with the gender identity. So your sexual organ might be one thing, but you identify as something else. So that's basically what transgender is. A smaller, and it explains how a smaller group will eventually go and have a surgery to match their assigned sex. So this, of course, if I was in class right now, and I will write this down at the 22-minute mark, what do you think I have here, to ask the class about the public restroom debate, military debate, and whether or not you think that we should, number one, let the transgenders in the military, and should we have bathrooms? Now, since I'm here with you guys, you probably already know what my answer is going to be, but of course we should let transgender people in the military. I just think that's ridiculous that we have people who are willing to fight for this country and they don't want to, we're not going to accept them to come do that. But also, and then the bathrooms, and now I feel like it's so different when we're in class because I feel like I'm talking to you guys, and then I don't really like saying how I feel about such controversial things on video and posting it on the internet, but it's my opinion, and I'm teaching you guys. But I just personally feel like I have one bathroom upstairs. When my boyfriend has his friends over, I don't care if they use the bathroom that I use. I genuinely do not understand why people think that sharing a bathroom with someone is, I guess the more thing is bathrooms with like 1 million stalls, and then one, which I get that, but then I also still don't get it because I don't have a problem with it. But at least if you're gonna have a place that, like, I've seen single-use bathrooms be a product of controversy, and it's like, how many bathrooms do you have in your house anyway? You know what I mean? Like, I understand the multiple stalls, people being fearful of a man dressed up as a woman walking in. And that poor woman in Puerto Rico who got killed, horrible. And if I was in class, actually, let me find that article to upload for you guys. Okay, I get that. But there's been controversy in, like, single stall bathrooms of it being, like, gender neutral. Be like, it's a single stall bathroom. How many bathrooms do you have? All right, we're not in class. But all right, so remember transgender is an umbrella term. So it is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity and or gender expression differs from what is typically associated with the sex they were or born with. So yeah. So it's just like a term that can have a lot of different categories underneath them, and two categories that describes in the book here is transsexual and gender dysphoria. Sorry if I hesitated there. So unlike transgender, transsexual is not an umbrella term. Many transgender people do not identify as transsexual and prefer the word as transgender. It is best to ask which term a person needs. So transgender, right? So transgender, it is you not having the same gender identity as what is your body part, right? Transgender. Transsexual is you not having the same sexual identity as what your body part is, right? So it might seem different, but we'll go into more with the next chapter, which is sexuality, about the specific differences of transgender, of gender versus sexuality. And then gender dysphoria is a psychiatric disorder that occurs when transgender identity causes distress in a person's life. Transgender identity used to be considered a psychiatric disorder, and experts now consider it problematic only when it causes distress in a person's life, which is known as gender dysphoria. So this also relates to the Puerto Rico article that I'll put up as an example of gender dysphoria. I mean, that poor woman had obviously had such a habit, horrible. I made me really sad to think that her whole life was just fear and pain. But so I want to hear your opinions on that. So gender dysphoria. So I'm skipping past. So let me see. This is slide 12. On slide 12 and slide 13, we have the definition. Now we're on slide 14, androgynous. Neither exclusively masculine nor exclusively feminine. So androgynous parenting. So this is an example of how the parents were parenting in the video that we watched. Androgynous parenting. So the examples that they put up in the chapter is concerned parent is this woman who was this parent who was concerned because the daughter was playing with cowboys and the son was playing with the doll, and they said it was fine for the girl to play with the cowboys, but the son playing with the doll might be a problem, which is interesting because it's basically insinuating that it's a girl, she could play with dolls, the cowboy's a doll, but then it's like the fact that the boy was playing with a doll was like might be a problem. So basically you're kind of inferring that the problem is that he might be gay. So the androgynous parenting is you having gender neutral styles, activities, interactions, flexibility where you let your children make their own decisions, be more open to others, and not having polarizing or strict gender identification. So example, having your girls focus on being pretty, having boys focus on cars. So that kind of relates to, I'll get to your discussion board post, which is due tomorrow, Thursday. So when I post this, it will I'm going to post this tonight, because if you watch this far and get the answers to the questions, then you deserve it. Discussion board 7, define gender socialization and give 2 examples of how Cohen argues gender identity is influenced. Wait. Oh, no, this is, no, this isn't the chapter that's due. This is define gender socialization. This is not the... Yeah, so it's not the... I'm reading the wrong discussion before, so ignore me. But discussion board post is I have what steps were taken and raised without a gender. Basically, how do the parents in Raised Without a Gender have... make sure that kids weren't being socialized by their gender. So what do, right? They called them Mappa and Papa. They had gender neutral names. They didn't want to find out what sex they were assigned at birth. They avoided the B and the G word. They, Sweden itself changes the pronouns in books. They have, if you remember the coloring books, it was like Sleeping Beauty telling the guy no. And, you have like lesbian parents and gay parents. Now, is that something you guys agree with? What do you agree with in the video? What don't you agree with that was in that documentary? I'm curious. I know these are things I want to talk about in class. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier for you guys to open up since you're not typing. I think it's great. I don't know if someone like my boyfriend would be comfortable with that, but it takes, like I said before, it takes a lot for people to get comfortable with. I personally think it's great for kids to not be in specific gender roles, right? So like boys playing with dolls and boys and girls playing together, not separating everybody by their gender. But yeah. So of course in the video we had some critiques, which he said it was damaging. David Eberhard said it was damaging. We were brainwashing them, which I think is so interesting because nobody sees that getting rid of these gender norms is considered brainwashing. We consider the opposite of it brainwashing, right? So it's like when you raise your kids and be like, you can do whatever you want, have your long hair, there's no need for you to, they're like, well, you're brainwashing your kid. But we don't think that is brainwashing when we're like, have a boy and be like, no, you have to cut your hair, boys don't have long hair, right? No, you're a girl, you don't act like that, right? So I just think that's interesting how it's seen as brainwashing, and people don't really see the other way as brainwashing. But, and they said that in Sweden, boys are failing more and boys are having higher suicide rates. So I'm curious if you guys think that is related to there's the Swedish school system of how they treat their kids. I'm curious. I'm gonna ask you guys that too. All right, let's move forward. So that's the androgynous parenting, the gender neutral parenting. So I'm going to put up a video for you guys to watch on the perspectives on gender of the pregnant man. I'll also leave it open so you guys can leave a comment on what you think about that for the pregnant man. He was born female with a male identity, transsexual, right? Born female with a male identity, transsexual because he's with a woman. Took male hormones and surgery, married a woman who couldn't get pregnant, and so Thomas got pregnant, stopped taking the hormones, and he gave birth. What do you think about that? Some people think that it's, you know, not only playing God, but also being, like, selfish. Like, all right, we get it, you're transgender, we're not going to judge you, but then, like, pick one, right? If you want to be a man, do things that a man can do. Do things that a man can do. You can't have kids. Or do you think, who makes the rules of what you can and cannot do? If his body is physically able to carry a kid, why can't he carry a kid? I'm curious on what side of the spectrum you guys are on that. All right, so this is what I want to, 30 minutes in. This is what I want to, I think I'm going to stop the video here. We're at 32 minutes. And I'll start a new video with the theories, because that's what I really want to do this lecture for. And because I'm scared I'm going to do like an hour video, I'm not going to be able to upload it. So I'm going to stop it here, and then we're going to go into perspectives on gender via theories. Okay, bye. We'll see you right now. All right, perspectives on gender. All right, perspectives on gender. So we have theories, which is, right, for families. Oh my God, my back hurts. I really want to stand. So for families, we had a lot of different theories, right? So we had consensus perspective, conflict perspective, and then when we talk about social class, we had social capital and exploitation and class identity, right? So we had all these theories in relation to class. We had theories when it came to how families were formed, so like feminist theories, symbolic interactionism. So far we've had theories for every kind of topic we're talking about. So similar to, we're gonna have the same thing for gender. I don't like the way this view is. Okay. And guys, I'm like still learning the same way. We're still learning together. Okay. Gotta stand. All right, so perspectives on gender that we're gonna go over for this chapter is biological perspective, feminism, masculinity, and symbolic interaction. So again, you don't need to pick one. These just explain different parts of discussion and how family can play different roles in different ways. So the biological perspective, this is interesting to me. So if you remember from reading the chapter, this perspective falls underneath the consensus perspective. And the reason why it falls underneath the consensus perspective, and I would ask you guys if we were in class, if you remember why, is that if you remember the consensus perspective when it came to families, was that this is the way it is. Like, you know, naturally women would just be in the house and men will go to work. That's the way it is. Like, that's it. I'm kind of saying it very not explaining it very well, but you guys already know because we went over in class so many times. But there's a certain reason why things are the way they are. There's no need to change them. So that in context of the females in the household, for the family, that in the perspective of inequality, right? There are certain people who are just going to be down. There are certain people that are just going to be, you know, the airplane pilots, and there's some people that can be the custodians of the building. If we didn't have these different levels of class, then it wouldn't give incentive for the people at the bottoms. My back really hurts. There wouldn't be incentive for people at the bottom to work their way up, right? We can't just have everybody on one level. So, right, that's the consensus, right? These are the way things are. We should keep it like this. So for that, for when it comes to gender, I mean, it's basically saying the same thing. We are biologically born one way, and these are the social roles that we're supposed to fulfill based on our biological, the way we are born. So, biological evolution, it takes into part. This view focuses on the stability and those aspects of family behavior. This view focuses on stability and those aspects of family behavior that may or may not have an evolutionary basis. Okay, so this idea that women are supposed to act one way and men are supposed to act one way sexually because of the way our body parts are built, right? Men are physically built for a one-time, oh my God, I should do that. A one-time thing. All right, I'm gonna stop. Whatever. Men are built for like a one-time thing, right? And then the woman is the one who gets pregnant and holds a baby for 9 months, and then goes and just childbears and born and gives birth and goes through the whole process. And then, right, naturally, we're the ones who are supposed to do the whole womanly role thing, right? This isn't a social construction. These are things that we're born with and we're supposed to do, right? So you can go back to the example of the pregnant man. You could change your sex all you want and take hormones and wear a beard and have long hair. At the end of the day, you wanted to have a baby because that's what you're biologically meant to do, right? So that's kind of a biological drink. So that's the kind of biological perspective. Biologically, this is what you're meant to do. And there's a reason for that. Women are naturally also more attracted to monogamy. So this is a very sexist point of view about relationships, of, again, with this idea of men being created to, right, have sex once and have a baby, and then that's it, right? Kind of like an animal, right? Just an animal laying eggs everywhere, and then it's like the female's job to just, take care of things, and also meant to have multiple partners, right? Like the male, and there's a lot of religions that do believe there's the male's road is to impregnate women and keep the society going, and then the woman's job too is to child rear. So that's that's one perspective. That's one view within this biological perspective, which is underneath this umbrella that we went over of this consensus perspective. Men aren't physically created to be monogamous. Men are physically created to actually have multiple partners, and that's where polygamy comes into place. So let me just read off the slide. The complementary natural roles of men and women. So the natural roles of men and women serve the greater social good. So similar to the roles of family, the roles of class, and the roles of gender, this serves a larger social good. Men naturally are more promiscuous. Women naturally invest in child rearing, and this fulfills the structural functionalist view of society that we went over a few times. So just to kind of repeat, this is discussed in page 172 of the chapter. So that's the biological perspective. If you want me to go over that a little bit more, give me a little note and I will. I'm just gonna, this is all explained on your PowerPoint and in the chapters, which you're supposed to be reading. All right, feminism. What do you think feminist theory says about this? I mean, you guys know. Gender identity and gender inequality is central to social order and family life. Gender differences are not natural, and rigid gender categories serve a male-dominated society. So it's very reflective of what we saw for the discussion of, what time is it? Oh gosh. It's very reflective of what we saw in the discussion of families, right? So the only reason why things are like this is because it fulfills of inequality and just for specifically harming women. The media plays a role in this, right? So some feminists have argued that because men have more influence over social rules, they set gender standards to serve their own interests. So these rigid gender categories that enforce roles in a male-dominated society and interactions between men and women in society reflect men's dominant position over women and reinforce these differences. So, I mean, it's just, again, more reflective of what we went over in other chapters. So we assign to the female gender the expectation of being home and changing diapers and, not working. And, this is because of this male dominant society that we live in, that lets men to go out, work, make the money, hold power financially, and also hold power over not just women but just society as a whole. I mean, you look at the majority of people who are in power, it is men, and then if you throw in the whole race thing in there, it is white men. So that is the feminist point of view of as introduced by Cohen in this chapter from page 173. So it's basically the same thing that we spoke about in the other categories of this chapter. I'm trying to see if there's anything that's like crazy different that I can pull out, but I really don't think that there is. I'm sorry, my back really hurts from sitting there. Yeah, so the standards that were set by our gender and our sex in the long run is just, a result of this male-dominated society. Masculinity. Rigid gender expectations take their own toll on men and male identity. So I'm sure this is something that kind of, a lot of men are just like, yes, like finally, it's not like, we're always the bad guys here. So this idea, this masculinity point of view of this topic, this idea of men being the dominant gender group is actually very harmful sometimes. And this, so we talk about the rigid gender roles of women and just like, we expect women to be like this. I actually saw something today on the internet. It was like a post of, I feel like I'm talking a million miles a minute. A post of the woman who ran for, what's her name? Cynthia Nixon. And there was like a post on Instagram, and she was like giving a whole things of like people expect from women, like, oh yeah, like don't look too pretty, don't try too hard. Like it was like a 2-minute thing of people contradicting themselves, like what they expect of women, and how it's like this kind of final conclusion of no matter what, you're never gonna make anyone happy. And then like I was reading the comments, and there was men like, well, what about all the expectations of men? Like you never talk about what women expect of men. And this is what this is basically saying. So, and how this idea of what being masculine is and being a man and supporting your family financially. I mean, just to pull it back to this idea of Corona, what's going on with Corona, I'm gonna write down, so I want to get you guys' opinions on this. What is it, 10 minutes? What do you guys think about this? Is this something that you, number one, as a man, is glad to hear about? I feel like it's not talked about enough. So, we kind of always, I like the way this says, as we have seen in our discussion of race, close examination of the dominant racial group, which is whites, obviously, has often been neglected in research. Right? So when we're talking about race and we're researching race, we usually talk about Black people, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans. We talk about minority groups, but we don't really talk about the dominant group, which is whites. So when we talk about gender inequalities, we talk about females, right? We don't talk about the things that men go through, really, right? It's not usually the topic of discussion. It's not the topic of some kind of movement that actually matters. And it's not usually the topic of, class like this. So focus of masculinity and gender studies emerged to start providing examinations of this dominant group. So rigid gender roles not only hurt women, but they also hurt men. And how masculinity is actually socially constructed. So this idea of, masculinity is socially constructed, right? So just think about that. If there are certain things you as a man was not told is what a man does, is that something that you would really feel like is important? Is that something you would really feel like is needed? You know, growing up, making sure you're able to, you go to college and have the degree to earn amount of money to support a wife and kids, right? Making sure that you are able to look a certain way in front of your guy friends, right? Play sports. So, and this also reflects a lot with, I thought it was interesting, you watched Aaron Hernandez documentary of, actually, I'm realizing that it might be like, okay, never mind. Aaron Hernandez documentary of gay men in football and how gay men aren't able to be in football, not just because of like homophobia and being like, oh my God, you're gay, I don't want you to be near me, but just this idea that gay men are not able to be tough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can be a gay guy and be extremely tough and beat people up, but this idea that they're not, right? So, that kind of turns in there. But, yeah, so how fatherhood, parenting, relationships with women are usually negatively affected because of this idea of being masculine. So that's discussed in chapter 5 on page 174. And then we're going to end here with symbolic interaction. So I'm realizing I'm not going to do this whole chapter because then I'm going to go over what the class was supposed to be. But I do want to go over these theories. And then the final theory is symbolic interaction, which again we have, for some reason, Cohen loves, did I choose this photo? I don't know if I chose this photo, or is it, was Steph Curry, I don't know why. It's just symbolic interaction, I like to use the Currys. But anyway, hopefully he's not one of the NBA players with Corona, right? So the same thing with symbolic interaction, if you remember for class, was that your role in your family is only fulfilled with your relationship with other people, right? So like, you're only a mom if you have a child to have you be a mom too. You're only a wife if you have a partner to be a wife too. So that's the same thing when it comes to symbolic interaction. And I am on slide, I believe, 22 now. Slide 22 of symbolic interaction, right? So complex social systems are maintained through elaborate interpersonal interaction. Individuals must enact their social roles and receive feedback from others to build and maintain their identities. So the same way with this, in relation to this theory, when it came to families, so right, I'm only a mom, if I, like I just said, so the same thing here. So you act your own sexual category. So like, I'm a female, I act like a female, and then that is reinforced by somebody, basically recognizing the fact that I am that female, right? So, I mean, I'm trying to see if there's anything here that's worth kind of repeating out loud for my notes. Individuals must enact their social roles and receive feedback from others to build and maintain their identities. And then individuals must enact their own sex categories into accomplishments. And then these behaviors eventually become lifelong patterns of gender interaction, which are reproduced within the family arena. So, you know, so think about growing up and you just finally, you recognize, you just know that you're a girl, right? You have pink toys and you have, you know, you have baby dolls and all this stuff. And then as you grow up, it's just a pattern in your family that the women start, you know, every few days we do like this big Sunday sauce and all the men drink, and the women, you know, we cook in the kitchen and then we go in and we feed the men, right? These are practices that are enforced that are created by our gender and then enforced through our interactions with other people. Oh, you know, this one's having a baby, so the women do the baby shower and the men, you know, lug the gifts to the house afterwards, right? These are patterns that are then repeated, and this is one way to look at gender, right? So not just based off of just like what are you biologically born with, but also your interaction with other people, and then this becomes repeated patterns. So these are the only 4 perspectives of theory that are discussed in this chapter. And then this also relates to gender socialization, which we've gone over a few times, of, you know, you socializing somebody based on how they're born. So if a baby is born, you know, it's a boy, and you know, you pick blue for the boy and pink for the girl. And this is when individuals start to internalize certain elements of the social structure, and then you make those elements a part of your own personality. So it's not just a color, but it's also norms and rules and beliefs. You learn and you adapt, and then you exert that in different ways. And these are just basically, this is the process of socialization, which I guess you can kind of also put in a category of a theory, but it's a part of the, the process that we are discussing when it comes to perspectives of gender. And you don't have to only pick one, but you can pick several. So I'll leave off with that. I don't want to, because then it's going to be like a 2-hour thing. So just try to, the rest of the chapter is, I'm trying to think. All right, I'll email you guys. I'll announce to you guys. The rest of the stuff I'll probably bang through when I say that. But, and then, review the rest of the chapter. We go into a little bit more when it comes to gender at work, gender pay, the gender pay gap. And then we'll go into sexuality, which is chapter 6, pages starting from page 97. And then we'll kind of conflate these two lessons, and I'll put another video up like this. But, all right, thanks for watching, for those who watched. And I will see your answers and see what you guys think about what we spoke about today. All right, let me know what you guys think about this. If you don't like it, let me know. If you do like it, if you want me to do something else, if you have any suggestions, like, oh, Skype, like, do you guys really want to do some kind of meeting every week at 5:55? Let me know. If you have any other suggestions that your teachers are doing, I'll do that. It's like 8:30 right now, so I'm tired. But, all right, so I'll see you guys. Be safe. Wash your hands.